Hello and welcome everyone, Simon here, drafting with Simon for StarCityGames.com, and I'm already into my first pack here, Journey into Nyx of course, with Citizen Tactics being the rare, probably what I'm going to take, just a very powerful rare to start your draft with. And looking at the alternatives, Supply Line Cranes, Cloaked Siren, and Grim Guardian are fine commons in their respective colors. I actually like the Grim Guardian the best, but Citizen Tactics is just a tad more powerful and makes for a very good first pick. Not a difficult decision at all. Daring Thief is also a pretty nice card, talking about rares. Once you get it going, it's actually kind of difficult for your opponent to come back from all the exchanges that go in your favor. Don't like Spire Spine and Sightless Brawler too much, although both are clearly playable. The commons have quite a lot to offer. Nyx Infusion, a Crone Mastiff, Hubris, Sigil Starfish, Starfall, Magma Spray. All fine cards, are actually better than the last pack, I think. Sigil Starfish is my favorite common in the set. I like it better than everything else, and none of these is green, so there is no color preference. Not that Starfish and Citizen Tactics work too well together, but it's still a fine combination to go with. Spire Spine is in the same color as the Tactics, but I'm just not overwhelmed by its power. And I think the decision is between Daring Thief and Sigil Starfish, with both offering quite a lot of value. Blue-green is about attacking and tempo, and I think that gives the edge towards Daring Thief. It's kind of interesting to just start off with two rares here, and I don't really love passing Starfish, but Daring Thief is a card that I'll make an exception for. I can also pick up cards to just allow me to tap the Thief, and then it's just super powerful. Alright, Temple of Epiphany is probably not a card I'm going to take here. Swarmborn Giant is really fun. I think it's a great design. I always want to play it, although I know it's often a liability. It's great when you are ahead, clearly. It's just quite a good card, I think. You often get at least one creature with it, which is more than fine, and sometimes it's really unfair in your favor. I don't like to play Renowned Weaver. I think that Font of Fertility is a fine card to draft and to play, but it's not something to get too excited about. So overall, this pack is quite weak, especially given how we started with. I think the best cards in our colors is Swarmborn Giant, and the best other card is Blade Tusk Boar. And because I want to stay open, I'm going to take Blade Tusk Boar here. The green card I'm passing is not a card that's super important for green decks, and so far I don't know which of these colors I'm going to be, and I want to get more information about the things that my neighbors want me to do. And talking about information, this pack certainly has a few good cards in my colors. There's also Blood Crazed Hoplite in black, but Oakheart Dryads, Warring Siren, Magma Spray, even Kiora's Dismissal give me a lot to choose from the colors that I've picked up so far, which makes me happy. I'm not super excited about the blue cards. I think they are worse than the Dryads and the Magma Spray. Arguably the better, well, maybe even the best commons in their colors. So potentially a Signal, which isn't as strong as I would like it to be because there's only one uncommon left in the pack. So most of the picks have been non-commons out of this. Oakheart Dryads goes with the Tactics, which is nice. I'm going to take it here. I think it's the best green common in certain decks that aren't as reliant on Golden Hind. So if you want the Rampier decks, then you want Golden Hind. But if you want the more aggressive tempo decks, then I think Oakheart Dryads is actually better. So I could have also gone with Magma Spray there. That would have made it a lot less likely that I would move into green for the Tactics, but maybe I would have gone blue-red for Daring Thief. That's still open, though. I can still pretty much draft anything I want. There's a Starfall here. Some green cards that are too expensive for my tastes. I don't like Satyr Hoplite at all. I don't really think it's a good card. And there's Hubris, which is fine. I overvalued it a bit. Right now, I'm not the biggest fan. I still think that I'm going to pick it here. Starfall is quite replaceable. Bounce is really powerful. And there's no green card that I want to pick. So I'm happy with the Hubris. Alright, is this a red Signal? I'm not sure. There's Sigil Skink and Mogus's Warhound. Both pretty fine. And then there's Ravenous Lucrocoda in green and Thassa's Ire in blue. Thassa's Ire is definitely playable, and it does gain a lot of value when you already have a Daring Thief. On the other hand, I'm just never super excited to have it. Sigil Skink is one of, well, probably the best red 2-drop in Journey into Nyx. And then Mogus's Warhound is a bit more of a problematic card, but it bestows, so you usually get your value out of that. Picking up another red card here isn't great with respect to positioning myself, but I still think that it's worth it to just keep picking the stronger card and then decide later which colors I'm going to be in. None of these cards are super amazing, except maybe for the tactics, but I'm not willing to pick weaker cards just to put myself into a color. Cloaked Siren is a great pickup here. It's better than Wildfire Cerberus. Not much to say about this pack. Giving me the 3rd blue card, 2 green cards, 2 red cards, and yeah, I'll have to see how that works out. Cyclops of Eternal Fury is quite the nice card. It's double red, but costing 6, that's not an issue. I don't think that Krufix's Insight is something I want with this deck. Humbler of Mortals, I think, is weaker than the Cyclops, and I would only consider it if I thought it was more likely that I would end up green than red, which I currently don't really think. I think it's more likely that I end up in blue with one of the other colors. And also I picked up the Citizen Tactics first, so the other cards that I've picked have been cards that other people have seen and passed me, which means that green is less likely to be open, whereas red is more likely to be open. I also passed a Magma Spray that I could have picked up on. Alright, Market Festival, not a card I want. Desecration Plague is playable but not exciting, which is the same for Thassa's Devourer. I'm going to take Storm Chaser Chimera here. If I end up in blue-red, it's a solid card. Not insane or anything, but things are looking like blue-red might be the way to go here. Citizen Tactics, not really a card to splash for because of the Strive cost, but oh well, I will have wasted 2 picks then. I'm going to take Starfall here. Pensive Minotaur is weak, and Gluttonous Cyclops is too expensive. There was also a Nature's Panoply there, but at that point I think that green isn't really coming together. I'm still going to take the Swarmborn Giant here because I think that Relic of Abandon is not really a card that blue-red really wants. Look at this Blade Tusk War, for example, and the Cloaked Siren. But the Giant is a fine green card. Alright, another monstrosity creature in Gluttonous Cyclops, but there's also Kira's Dismissal Wheeling, which is quite powerful, I think. I'm always happy to have one in my deck. And here I could take Knowledge and Power, but I didn't even pick up any of the Starfish. I had to pass one for Daring Thief, so I'm just going to take the creature, which is certainly more playable than the enchantment. Alright, I'm not hoping not to play Flame Speaker's Will, especially because this isn't going to become a heroic deck all of a sudden. I'm still open towards all of these 3 colors, well, 2 of them, but I'm tending towards just playing blue-red at this point. Fated Retribution is not a card that bothers me. It's good to know that it's in the draft, so we might want to play around it if that seems appropriate. Otherwise, Springleaf Drum, Airy Worshippers, basically the combo right next to each other, Bolt of Kuranos and Retraction Helix. Now, Retraction Helix I like a lot less in the new format because I think things have slowed down a bit. People aren't going absolutely crazy with bestow creatures and ordeals anymore, so bouncing is also a bit worse. Airy Worshippers I like quite a bit. I think all the inspired guys have gotten up in value, and it does seem better than picking up a Bolt of Kuranos. Picking up the Airy Worshippers also means that I will then have Daring Thief and the Worshippers, so I can pick up Retraction Helix and maybe even the Springleaf Drum on the wheel. Well, Retraction Helix later on in this draft, but the Springleaf Drum maybe even on the wheel. So I'm not unhappy to pass the Bolt of Kuranos. I think I'll do fine without it. And here, not too much for me, I have to say. Siren Songlyre does also get a bit better in the new format, and I do have the creatures that want to get tapped. It is a card that you can usually wheel though. Stratus Walk and Fearsome Temper are fine. And then there's Divination, which I actually like the best out of these options because I'm not really looking to let opponents 2-for-1 me if it's at all possible to prevent it. I'm just going to take the card that allows me to generate value. There's also Nyxborn Rolliker, not really the card that this deck wants. And Pinnacle of Rage, speaking of 2-for-1s, alternatively exactly the same commons, so this is just exactly the same print run. Here's the Karamitras favor. If green had happened, then this would be a great card to get my creatures tapped. I also had the Swordwise Centaur option last turn, but at that point I figured that I was pretty much blue-red. I guess I could have still switched to blue-green, but the Worshippers I would have taken anyway. And I'm happy with the Divination. I'm just actually going to take another one here, putting me more into a control deck, into a control shell, which kind of also wants the Pinnacle. But if I have 2 Divinations, I can then really commit to drafting a control deck. This is a very easy Nyxborn Triton. I can't really cast anything else, and Nullify and Pillar of War are not on the same lever. So yeah, let's just lock that up. This pack is interesting. Stormcaller of Kharanos is what blue-red wants, just being able to scry indefinitely. Kragma Butcher is a much more powerful card and an insane 3-drop. It's pretty much what you want in blue-red. Even if you're control, it's a pretty good card. Otherwise, I would probably take Eternity Snare. It works really well with my control shell that I already have, but the Butcher I think is a bit too strong not to take here. I'm wondering if anything of this will come around, but it's quite unlikely. 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's only going to be 2 cards left in the pack, so probably Whelming Wave and something unplayable. Maybe Claim of Erebos. Who knows? It's always possible, though. And wow, a late Eater of Hope and Asphyxiate. Also Archetype of Imagination and Bolt of Kharanos still in the pack. Both of these work quite well in my deck, but because I'm so controlish with the Divinations, I want the removal much more than a 6-drop. That generates a lot of tempo, so I'm happy to pick up a removal spell here. And Tromokratis. This is pretty much the perfect card for me. With 2 Divinations, a bit of removal, a bit of early blockers, this is going to be my finisher to win games. I really like control in this format, and now that Journey's in the mix, and even if it's not a clear-cut control deck, having a finisher like Tromokratis is huge. Here I'm going to take another Butcher over Astral Cornucopia. And this is the pack that I started with, which is really interesting. And not only did Fated Retribution wheel, but there's also Reckless Reveler and Springleaf Drum still in the pack. Now I said that Springleaf Drum was probably going to be good in my deck. The problem is that I don't have any 2-drops. So if I hide the green, then you can see that I have Daring Thief, 2 Butchers, and the Airy Worshippers. So Springleaf Drum is really good in my deck. Mogus's Warhound, on the other hand, is not even a card that I want to play. So picking up the drum here is kind of greedy, because I know that I'm lacking 2-drops. And I will have to fix that in Pack 3, in Theros. Just picking up the most random 2-drops, just to have early blockers. And then my game plan is actually going to be to control all the 2/2s with my 2/3s, and win with the late game card advantage and Daring Thief. So that's kind of the plan that I'm going for. Pinnacle of Rage wheeling as well, which is great. Just taking the on-color cards here. I also managed to pick up the Siren Songlyre. I'm not sure if I'm going to run it. I could run the Nullify because I don't have enough 2-drops. And Mogus's Warhound I'm not so happy about at this stage because, well, it is a bit aggressive. Stormcaller of Kharanos actually wheeled next to Claim of Erebos, so that also worked out nicely. Alright, going into Theros, I really only need some 2-drops, maybe a 5-drop, like a Pressing Chimera, that would also be great, but it's not high up on the list. Also, you can usually table these, so it's really only 2-drops at this stage to make this into a nice blue-red deck. Well, that didn't really work out so well. Some nice cards here: God's Willing, Grey Merchant, Nemesis of Mortals, Time to Feed, Erebos' Emissary. But for me, Pressing Chimera, Breaching Hippocamp, and a Crone Horse, that's just a lot worse, I have to say. I like the Crone Horse. I am a bit defensive and would generate some value with that. I also like Pressing Chimera. I think that works really well with what my deck is trying to do, but also in the curve. Breaching Hippocamp is kind of sweet with the Daring Thief and the other untapped triggers that I have, but that requires me to actually attack with them. So the Breaching Hippocamp is kind of not what I want to be doing in this deck. I think that Pressing Chimera is a bit better than a Crone Horse in this deck. However, the Crone Horse is less likely to wheel. I've often seen the Chimera wheel, which I actually think is wrong, because it's actually quite good. But Kronhorse could just be the better choice for me here. It's really close. I'm just going to stick to the blue card because I think that in the end I will want as many evasive creatures that also generate card advantage. And the Kronhorse I can always compensate for. I also have 4 4-drops that I'm going to play and 0 5-drops. So I think that the Chimera is a bit better, although I could have maybe wheeled it. Alright, Melitist Charlatan is not a card I'm super excited about. Copying my spells is fine, but not something that's high up on my list. I think Spearpoint Aureate is the card that I should probably be taking, because it's better than Borderland Minotaur. Well, it does a bit more. You can also bestow it, which might be relevant if I'm turning it from a control deck into the deck that wants to close out a game. You can also use it on defense quite well. I love Borderland Minotaur, but Spearpoint Aureate is the better package. Alright, where are the 2-drops? Here they are. Omen Speaker. Dissolve, Annul, Benthic Giant. Yeah, none of these come close to Omen Speaker. Omen Speaker is actually the best 2-drop I can think of in this deck. And here, Triton Tactics. Well, Triton Tactics or Wave Crash Triton. This is pretty much the decision. This is not an Aquarius form deck. This is not a Dragon Mantle deck. And this is also not a Spellhard Chimera deck, which most decks aren't. It would actually, in theory, be a Colossus of Akros deck if this pack was completely empty and I didn't have Tromokratis yet. Do I have a few ways to trigger the Triton, or would it just be another blocker? Usually you can find ways to target it, but in this deck I have actively not picked up anything to do that. So I think Triton Tactics is clearly the choice here. It's kind of like a Breaching Hippocamp with regards to the inspired creatures that I already have and want to trigger, but this spell also makes sure that they survive and generates a huge tempo swing. Alright, doesn't look like I'll get some cheap creatures, but there's the option to pick up another blue flyer, with the reasoning being the same, that they are just superior to the Hippocamp. I also think that I probably should look at my curve and decide to take the cheaper card here. It's not much worse than the Scholar, and it will make sure that I will not be stuck on too many expensive spells. I'm also going to trigger the Chimera quite a bit, so I think you could go either way in that spot. I just like to take the cheaper card when in doubt. This is between Annul and Mnemonic Wall. I really don't play Mnemonic Wall if I can help it. It's just never super exciting to have it. And even in this deck, I have a couple of cards that I can return, but none of them I'm super excited about. I'm just going to take Annul. I'm probably not main decking it because I already have so many cards, but I'm happy to have it in my sideboard. And sometimes I'll even main deck it, especially now that there's like 6 mana enchantment creatures in addition to all the bestow. That makes quite the difference. All right, the easy pick here would be to just slam the Griptide. I have to look at the Satyr Rambler at least. Steam Augury is out of the question, but the Satyr Rambler would give me a 2-drop that I'm desperately lacking, desperately needing, I guess. Griptide is quite a bit stronger though. Yeah, I'm just taking the Griptide. I will have to play first with this deck because my early defense is just not sufficient. But other than that, I'm quite happy with how this deck looks. Also with 2 Divinations, you really want to go first. I'm going to take Stymied Hopes here and I'm going to run it because it will make up for my lack of 2-drops. Breaching Hippocamp, I'm probably not running. I'll just take it anyway, it's a playable card. And here, Fate Foretold, not really what I want to be doing. I have enough cards that cost me tempo. I could pick up a Thassa's Bounty for the really grindy matchups, because Envilroar Raptor doesn't seem like a card that I would ever board. Oh, interesting. Benthic Giant and Annul Wheeling with the Warcaller still in the pack. Now, somebody could get a present with the Warcaller. I'm not running to Annul main deck, and I don't need the Benthic Giant with the 2 6-drops, with the 2 red 6-drops that I already have. Just gonna take another Annul. If my opponent really has something crazy good, then I would want to have one more of them. I'm gonna take out the Spellhard Chimera. I'm not gonna run it, even though I have a couple of instants and sorceries. It's just never great in my experience. Alright, time to build this deck. Alright, what's going through my head is that I kind of want to build an 18 land deck that wants to play first, so that my lack of 2-drops isn't going to cost me too much. And then I kind of want to run Springleaf Drum as a combo card with all the inspired cards, especially Daring Thief and where is it, Airy Worshippers. But I'll have to see if that's gonna be viable or not. Don't need this. Could run the Starfall, I actually don't hate it. And Cyclops of Eternal Fury might not actually make the deck. Now that I think about it, it doesn't trade favorably, and I'm not all that interested in the haste anyway, so I could definitely do without that. And there's quite a few too many spells here right now. There's also a problem with the Mogus's Warhound, because I'm lacking 2-drops, but it's not the kind of 2-drop I want. I could see it as a 3-mana bestow, and even then, it's not really what my deck wants or needs too much. So I can easily cut this if I wanted to go for the least amount of creatures in my deck. So just a straight control approach. I think this would probably be the creatures that I always want to run. I want the Stormcaller just because of the late game scry, and it's a 2/2. It's never going to be completely awful. That puts me at 14 creatures with there's Spearpoint Ariad. I put that in the 6th spot, and Nyxborn Triton at the 5. So if I put them here, my curve is actually looking quite nicely. 6 3-drops is a lot, but I only have 1 2-drop, so I would need that. I don't want to have my Mogus's Warhound suicide into something, or even not being able to block with it. I don't think I can afford that. Siren Song Lyre is interesting. It might be the better option compared to Springleaf Drum, because Springleaf Drum, the mana is quite unlikely to matter, but if I see this as more of a 6-drop or in the 4 to 6-drop range, I could actually see just using this together with the Thief or the Worshippers to not only take out a creature, my opponent's best creature, but also get the Inspire trigger without playing a dead card like Springleaf Drum. Now, generating mana is not awful, clearly, but this is just some of the things that I have to think about. So something that I think when looking at all these cards is that I have a bit too much bounce. There's 3 bounce spells. Triton Tactics and Nullify and Stymied Hopes are also a bit too much of situational cards. And then Siren Song Lyre and Springleaf Drum are just kind of weak. But of course I would love to have them combine them with Daring Thief or Airy Worshippers. Now if I'm just winning, if the game was long enough, I could also just afford to not play these fancy cards. And if I ever get the chance to tap either of them, I'm happy. But if not, then at least I won't have bad cards in my deck that will make it more difficult for me to win if I only draw like 1/2 of the combo, if you want. Alright, that said, I think that this deck is looking fine, and that this deck needs the Divinations and the Bolts. I will also run Starfall and Pinnacle of Rage because I want it on 5 and 6. This is the part where my mana curve needs some help, and then I at least want one of these ways to tap my creatures because I want the punch of Daring Thief and Airy Worshippers. I think that in most matchups, if I get this one of them going, I will be winning the game, which is kind of the goal. So this is already 27, and I've cut a lot of creatures, but none of them I'm unhappy about not having. I think that Thessa's Bounty isn't necessary in the main deck because I have the 2 Divinations. Spell Chimera I'm not gonna run, and I don't want to main deck Annul. So that leaves the cards here on the right, which most of them you would say are pretty good. I also picked the Griptide over a 2-drop, so I will probably run that. The thing is, the only thing really is that I'm scared of running all these bounce spells and all the counters and then just not having anything real to do. So this is kind of the whole thing. I'm always running Triton Tactics, by the way. And also Griptide I think is better than Hubris and Hero's Dismissal. So that really leaves these 2 bounce spells and these 2 counter spells up for discussion. And Siren Song Lyre and Springleaf Drum are also questionable. This is 27, and I've already said that I kind of want to run 18 lands. I see myself I can't really see myself flooding out with Tromocratis, Pinnacle of Rage, the Scry triggers, the Scry activated ability, and I even have the Stormcaller and 2 Divination. So I really want to have 18 lands to hit my mana and to just play a 9/9 super solid mana base. That means I have to cut 5 cards from this setup, and I already decided that Griptide is better than the other bounce spells. However, that means that from these 6 remaining cards, I have to cut all but 1. Because Trident Tactics is just too good not to play, and also works really well with what my deck is trying to accomplish. So, I think the smartest decision would probably be to play Stymied Hopes, because it gives me another relevant play on turn 2, which Nullify in a sense does, but if I ever don't draw the second island on turn 2, I will just not be able to counter something, and then I might be in trouble. Stymied Hopes could be exactly the card that I want, giving me some early advantage while not being super dead in the late game. I'm not sure if that's absolutely correct, but the lack of 2-drops makes me think that I need Stymied Hopes more than I need a card like Springleaf Drum, Siren Song Lyre, or so on. So how would this look? I'm not playing a lot of powerful cards, and I'm mostly talking about the Hubris. I can always bring in Annuls, Nullifies, Cura's Dismissal if I think that the matchup needs it. And the most difficult part about this deck building is Siren Song, Lyre, and Springleaf Drum. Do I need ways to tap my creatures, or is this just a small bonus on otherwise solid cards? I think that if I wanted to include these, I would kind of have to cut more cards, but I want the critical mass of these instants and sorceries because I think that they are pretty much the best part of my deck. But if I cut creatures, then the equipment and the Springleaf Drum just get so much worse. So I hope that this will give me the best shot at out-controlling my opponents while still having some sweet tempo plays available. I'm not 100% sure on the Stymied Hopes, but other than that, I'm quite happy with the build. And 9/9 is just the mana base of choice to minimize the danger of hitting mana trouble. I could run more islands, which is what Magic Online suggested, but with 2 double red cards, a gold card, and the need to just hit both lands, one of each type, I'm happy with the 9/9 setup. Alright, and yeah, Griptide might actually be one of the weaker cards in this deck, but I think it's going to be better than the alternatives in the sideboard. Time for round 1.